So I said, you and me. The email question I have for you is, why is there a lockup period for your fund? Okay.
Because get this, right?
Sarah gave that to me for Christmas. All right, what do you want to cover?
I actually went to a whole bunch of blog posts. It was just so mundane and so much of the same thing. So I brought a couple of deals to talk about the kind of deals we're working on.
Okay.
Talk a little bit about the success of the fund event because we raised a little over $1 million in January.
Wow.
So yeah, we went from 13 to 14. We're at 14.5 right now.
Excellent.
So we can start out talking about that, and then we can kind of dovetail into the types of loans. I could use give two examples of loans that we're doing right now.
Okay. You have your training session after, right?
I do.
Okay, so that's why I don't want you to be late for that.
It's fine because I always get there. Even if we warm up anyway, and sometimes after 50 minutes, I can't do anymore. So we usually do three rounds of 3 or 4 different exercises, 3 times each. It's the gnarliest hour ever. Sometimes it's the gnarliest 45 minutes ever. That's fine with me,
As long as it's not the gnarliest 10 minutes, then I'd say you gotta do something about getting into shape. Okay.
That's right.
All right, ready? Here we go. Welcome. You're listening to The Best of Investing on Talk 910. I'm your host, Edward Brown, and I'm proud to have as my co-host Mark Hanf of Pacific Private Money, one of California's fastest growing mortgage investment firms. In fact, we've been doing this show now for over 5.5 years.
Can you believe it?
I don't know. I started losing a little bit of hair a couple of years ago, though. Killer.
Oh, you were looking at some of your old videos of The Best of Investing circa 2010?
Yeah. Yes, unfortunately.
You were more of a man up top and less of a man below your neck.
Okay, well, we'll just move on from that one. Okay, our phone number is 888-912-1190. Use that number to answer the trivia questions for 3 vacations given away during this show. And the vacations are not sponsored by the radio station, but by Lighthouse Resort and Marina, located 1 hour northeast of San Francisco. And those vacations are free. Their only request is a $75 cleaning fee to cover the housekeeping expenses. Today's trivia theme is miscellaneous trivia. Gotta make
nail me with those again.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, those are fun.
Those are fun.
Absolutely.
Okay. Our website, bestofinvesting.com. Check us out on television, Comcast Channel 26 and AT&T Channel 99. Saturdays at noon, Sundays at 6 p.m. And Mark, your fund has grown quite a bit. Why is that?
Well, at Pacific Private Money, we have a mortgage pool fund called the Pacific Money Fund that we've been talking about on the show from time to time for the last several years. The reason we talk about it is because it's just a great opportunity for people to participate in an alternative investment strategy that, Edward, you and I have referred to as mortgage investing. And mortgage investing, it's not like investing in stocks or bonds or other types of traded or over-the-counter liquid types of investments. It's a relatively illiquid, although we do always keep capital in the fund in case someone needs to redeem their shares. But the way mortgage pool funds work is we pool money together from various investors, accredited investors, which is if you have $1 million net worth or more, you're generally considered to be an accredited investor. So there's a little bit of a qualification there to participate. But we pool money together from our investors, and we make real estate loans. At Pacific Private Money, we've been making short-term real estate loans, mostly real estate bridge loans, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a moment, to borrowers mostly here in Northern California. We've been doing it since 2008. We've made around 1,200 loans to date. We make anywhere from 15 to 20 loans per month on average right now. And we'll talk about a couple deals we're working on right now that are kind of representative of the type of deals we do. And when you hear about them, you'll understand maybe why they needed to come to a company like Pacific Private Money for a privately funded real estate loan as opposed to their bank, because the banks say no a lot these days, thanks to Dodd-Frank and the newer, harsher restrictions on lending. And so companies like Pacific Private Money exist to serve that alternative financing demand, that basically the plan B when plan A fails. And plan A used to work all the time 10 years ago. You all heard jokes. Anybody could fog a mirror, and you heard about cabbies and people who cleaned houses. They were buying houses.
Well, The Big Short, the movie The Big Short,
Yeah.
was actually very accurate about how they were just giving loans to anybody.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I still read multiple blog posts to keep apprised of what's happening in mortgage lending and in real estate, and to bring some interesting articles for our show here. And even this week, they were still talking about how some institutions who've been buying up non-performing seconds that probably haven't received a payment in years, and they're still, some of them are still going after some of these people, which is just amazing. So anyway, it's even though now we're many years into the real estate recovery, there's still a little bit of a hangover for many people, thanks to what was happening back in 05 and 06 and 07. But anyway, it's been a great month at Pacific Private Money for our mortgage pool fund. In January, on the 20th of January, we had an event at Piatti's Restaurant in Mill Valley where we did a presentation on the activities of the fund. We presented its success for 2015 and the performance numbers. And in January, we raised another $1 million for the fund, so it was really good. So we had the most new investors coming in, and anywhere from $50,000 to one guy dropped $400,000 into the fund.
Wow.
So again, we're not out there seeking the millions or the billions. We're really out there to serve basically everyday investors who are looking for ways to diversify their holdings. A lot of people are afraid of what's happening in the stock market right now, so they're looking around going, okay, well, where can I put my money where I can get a yield? And they look at bonds. Those are kind of scary. Corporate bonds, well, if you don't know what you're doing, you might get a surprise there. REITs, well, REITs also, they can lose money. And one of the things about mortgage investing in a mortgage pool fund or maybe even an individual note, the neat thing about mortgage investing is that it's a form of lending. And with lending, you have collateral and security. So it's the money we raise from our investors is used to fund a business model that is geared towards making smart loans to people who need non-bank financing, and we look for specific types of loans, typically ones that will pay back within a year. We don't want to get stuck in a loan. We don't want to make a loan someone can't afford to make the payments on. We don't want to foreclose on somebody. We don't want to make a second to somebody who's in financial distress but has really no idea how they'll ever pay that money back. In other words, we don't like to equity strip people's properties. That was the hard money industry for some 10, 15, 20 years ago, maybe. But
Some people were gunning for the property.
that industry, they used to call it the loan to own business, right? Loan to own. Well, we don't do that at Pacific Private Money. In fact, most companies like us today don't do that. We have legitimate business models. We're highly regulated, where it was kind of a Wild West maybe 10, 15 years ago. So we're regulated. That's a good thing. So there are loans we stay away from. We say no a lot when it's just not the right fit for us, and our investors really like to hear that. People come into our office pretty much weekly. Every week we talk to 2 or 3 or 4 new investors who come in and ask us questions about how our fund operates. Our office is in downtown Novato here in Marin County. And they really like the idea that we don't just, every phone call and email we get for someone who needs money, oh yeah, sure, we'll make you a loan, and here are the terms, 10% and 3 points, and if you can afford that.
You say low, no, a lot more than you
No,
say
we
yes.
do. We say no. Well, it depends. Some months it's like 19 out of 20, and other months it's maybe 9 out of 10. But it's the vast majority of applications we get we say no to, and it's not just because we're being mean. It's because maybe they're out of state, maybe it's too small a loan, maybe it's
The LTV is too high.
LTV is too high, they need 100% financing, although we're going to talk about a 100% financing example in a moment here.
Okay.
So,
let me go back to the investor who put in 400,000. I mean,
Yeah.
that guy must have a lot of confidence.
Well,
what was the story on that?
so the first time I met him was at the fund presentation event on January 20th. Now, he's the brother of an active investor already with us. And what was interesting about this guy was a real character. So we do the presentation, you and I, it takes about 40 minutes. Do you remember the guy who stood up and said, asked the question, how do I know you guys are not Bernie Madoff?
And it's so funny because a lot of people came up to me afterward and apologized for that guy, but I said, you know what? I'm not offended. I
wasn't offended either. That's a
no,
good
I think
question.
It's an excellent question.
Yeah. So I did provide him an answer. And by the way, if I'll just give a short plug, we did record that presentation and we just uploaded it to YouTube. And that presentation is going to be available on the Pacific Money Fund website, which is pacificmoneyfund.com. My IT guy hasn't quite got the link up yet, but we will have that. And if you want to get the link emailed to you directly, you can just contact us at Pacific Private Money. If you go to our website, our email is right there. It's really easy to send us an email. So, but that was just to finish that story. Yeah. You know, he actually came up and apologized afterwards. He kind of laughed it off. He was being a little bit of a goof, but it's a legitimate question, and and it deserves a legitimate answer. And I won't go into a lot of that detail today, but I'd be happy to go over that detail with anybody. But suffice to say that you and I, Edward, have been in Marin County for over 50 years, and we intend to each, yeah, and we intend to stay here, thrive here. Our families thrive here, and the nice thing about the loans that we make is that you can request a list of those loans at any time. You could go pull up property profiles and see that yes, in fact, those loans exist. So, unfortunately, for people who invested in Bernie Madoff, for the most part, they have no idea what he was doing. It was all smoke and mirrors.
Well, yeah, and I think in a statement from him, it's not backed by anything.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Here you can see what it's backed by. Okay, we're gonna before we cut to our first commercial break, I want to give a little plug here to the Roman Spa Resort. That geothermal waters, which come directly from the source and pipe into their 3 naturally hot pools, offering a level of relaxation and healing that transcends the ordinary. So they have 60 charming guest rooms, and it's the perfect choice for the peaceful retreat that you're looking for, a weekend getaway with the girls, or the ultimate romantic holiday. So check them out at www.romanspahotsprings.com, or give them a call at 800-914-8957. Check the website out. Looks like a really cool place. I'm sure my wife will love for me to take her there.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so here we're going to cut to our first commercial break. The trivia question is just miscellaneous trivia. Question: how many states border the Gulf of Mexico? The first caller with the correct answer is going to win a free 3-day 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Call 888-912-1190. That's 888-912-1190 to answer this question. How many states border the Gulf of Mexico? And don't touch that dial. You're listening to The Best of Investing with Edward Brown and Mark Hunt, and we'll be right back. Okay.
So I'm going to jump back in just to the just talk a little bit more about mortgage investing and the growth of the fund, because I didn't actually say the yield we were paying. So let's jump back in, because I know that sometimes when I get going, if I'm not being careful, I can go off in a direction and not come back again.
Not a problem. So I figure if you come to my house at like 8 a.m. because I have no idea what the traffic's going to be like.
So when is the party from? Because I thought it was in the evening, but I guess it's a day.
It's 12 to 4.
Oh, 12 to 4.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Did you know there was a Lee Steinberg article in the Chronicle today? Did you see it?
No, I don't get the Chronicle, so I didn't see that.
Yeah, so if you want to pull it up online, you can see it. He was,
Yeah.
what I didn't realize about him is I remember hearing of him, 5, 6, 7 years ago that he was coming back, but I guess he kind of went back and then went down. I mean,
Well, I think he went like this, then he went like this,
Right.
then he went like this.
But he also, I think,
a second down?
well,
Or
let's just say he didn't get sober until 2010.
Yeah.
So, and I remember he went downhill like quite a while ago. So anyway, I guess I was surprised at the dates when I saw that. That I guess between 2000 and 2000, maybe he had a 10-year period where his life was just kind of.
I think that's what it
Yeah,
was.
so maybe that's it. Yeah. So yeah.
What was the article about?
Well, just about him.
Oh.
You know, it didn't actually wasn't about his party. It was just more about him being here, and it was interesting.
That's cool. See, you tell people you.
Okay, yeah, I'll come because Lisa was also asking if I could do certain things. She was honeydew she wanted me to do this weekend. I said, well, I could probably do it either Saturday morning or Sunday morning. On Sunday, the game doesn't start till 3, so I can do what she needs me to do on Sunday. But Saturday, then yeah, I can absolutely come over early.
Okay. Here we go. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mark Hahn, president of Pacific Private Money. When we cut to the first commercial break, we asked this trivia question: how many states border the Gulf of Mexico?
Well, I don't know if that was a trick question because if it's the United States, it's just one, isn't it? California? I'm going to say
No, the Gulf of Mexico.
Oh, the gosh. Okay,
Yeah,
I was thinking Baja. Okay, silly me. Sorry.
Yeah.
Gulf of Mexico, I would say 4.
5. Yeah, I guess I haven't really kind of looked at the map recently, but trust me, it's 5. If that's what the internet says, it's got to be the truth, right?
Yes,
so
it does.
let's see, Mark, before we get back to what we were talking about here, just want to make a quick mention here. At the Lesher Theater, actually, let's see, tonight is Frank Sinatra, and on the 27th of February is the Beatles. Now, again, these are tribute bands, they're not the actual, because George Harrison isn't around, and neither is Frank Sinatra. But you got to check them out at the Lesher Theater in Walnut Creek. They are doing some performances, and again, these are tribute bands. So tonight, February 6th, I think they still have tickets. They're very reasonably priced. The venue is just beautiful. So check them out. Okay, Mark, let's get back to what we were talking about.
Right, so we were talking a little bit about mortgage investing and the Pacific Money Fund and how people can diversify their savings and retirement portfolios into an alternative investment strategy that we're referring to right now as mortgage investing. And what I didn't get a chance to talk about in the last segment is that funds like the Pacific Money Fund are generally geared to pay out a relatively high yield with interesting safety and security features that aren't found in some of the more traditional investments, including the stock market. And so in 2015, the Pacific Money Fund paid 8.2%, and that was the total distributions distributed monthly, by the way, monthly interest distributions or monthly distributions on your shares. Not all of it's interest, there's some other earnings in the fund as well, but it's mostly interest. And that was 8.2%. For those taking monthly distributions, that is. There's also the option not to take distributions if you want to be a growth investor, and for those people, they got a compounded yield of just a little bit more than 8.5%. So between 8.2 and 8.5% paid to our investors in 2015. Now, and of course, I have to say that past performance is not a promise of future results, but we designed the Pacific Money Fund to pay between 8 and 9%, and we've been really hitting right down the middle of that target because we know that, generally speaking, we're making loans at approximately 10%, and after fund expenses, including loss reserves and audits and other CPA annual fees and taxes, we're producing yield in the mid-8s. So again, I think it's for the type of fund that it is, it's highly efficient, and we believe it will be reliable in those distributions and those earnings for certainly at least the next few years, primarily because we know that even if we're heading towards another real estate cycle, and of course nobody knows when real estate prices, when it will turn from a what's now a seller's market into a buyer's market, and when prices may dip down again. But we're prepared for that because our business model is really to make short-term loans.
And at low loan to value.
And at low loan to value. So we're trying to protect our shareholders from principal loss by keeping our exposure, our loan to value exposure, at 70% or below. And so far, we've been pretty good at that as the weighted average loan to value of the loans versus the market value of the real estate in our portfolio of loans, that is, it's 55%. So we believe that we have a portfolio that can withstand the next market cycle, the next real estate market cycle. And again, because real estate cycles tend to take a while, we believe that by making short-term loans to people with a clear exit strategy, either they're going to refinance us conventionally when a certain thing happens, or they're going to sell the property, that we're not making the 20-year loans.
Well, also, you have a loan loss reserves, even though there are no losses.
Well, that's right, and so there's reserves for losses, and the nice thing about a mortgage pool fund is that if one or two or a few loans turn troublesome, and you have to go out and collect, and maybe there's expenses to collect those, and even if there were a loss of principal, it in theory it's not going to have a huge impact on the fund earnings. So again, those losses get distributed among the entire pool.
And you had mentioned before in the first segment about keeping your money in for a certain period of time, which kind of leads us to this email question we received, which was, why is there a lockup period for your fund? Because you've mentioned that in the past.
Okay, so you can call it a lockup period, you can call it a minimum investment period. We ask all incoming members when they open up an account with Pacific Money Fund, that we tell people, look, there's no fee going in or out, also called a no-load fund, if you keep your money in for at least 2 years. So there's definitely no fee coming in no matter what, because all your money, if you invest $100,000, all $100,000 goes to work. There's no fee to offset that. However, if you need to pull your money out before the 2-year period has transpired, there is an early redemption fee, and that fee is a declining fee over time. It starts out at 5% in the last 6 months. It's only 2%, so it's designed not to be punitive, but we don't want people to treat this like a money market account, because we do have a real business model. And so why we chose 2 years, that upon review of other mortgage pool funds in our market, we discovered that was, some were more, a few were less, but most were 2, 3, some even 5 years for the lockup period. We chose 2 because we didn't want it to be too long and not too short. We just really wanted to know that if someone was going to write a check to us and make a deposit, that we could count on the ability to utilize that money for our business model, because again, we don't want to have it's paperwork heavy to have money coming in and out all the time.
So if there's no fee to go in and there's no fee to go out, how do you make your money for your company? Because obviously you're not in this for your health.
So the earnings of the fund are distributed in full every month after deducting for accruals that we make for the expenses of the fund. So we estimate what the fund expenses are going to be on an annual basis, and those fund expenses include the annual CPA audit, filing of the tax returns, and the loan loss reserve, and a couple of other very, very small expenses.
Well, the administration of sending out the checks.
Right, the fund administration, exactly. So those are estimated, and so we accrue those as expenses, and then all of the profits and the income are distributed. So we make those distributions monthly, and some funds pay quarterly. We chose monthly because that just
people like getting a monthly.
Yeah, it's a hit. So so we distribute all the interest back down to our share price, which is $1,000 a share, and so that doesn't fluctuate that much. So we charge about 10% on average for our loans. Some are at 9%, 9.5%, 10%, and after expenses, we're able to produce a yield of 8.2% on the monthly interest and profit distribution. So it's been pretty consistent. That number has not wiggled much in the last 30 months that we've been making those distributions. So you might be thinking to yourself, if you're listening to the first time, maybe you haven't heard this show before, or maybe you haven't heard us talk about the types of loans we make in the fund. One of the questions we get from almost anybody who comes into our office to meet with us and sit with us says, who would pay 10% for a loan? Or why would anybody pay a 10% note rate when you can get money, a bank loan for 4%? And it's interesting because more often than not, the people that ask that question haven't tried to get a bank loan recently.
Yeah.
Or if they did, they're just, they're kind of, maybe I shouldn't say spoiled, but they're,
Well, they say they wouldn't pay that much for
Right.
a loan either.
maybe, they've never been in a situation where the bank said no. And nowadays, thanks to the tighter lending restrictions, the banks say no a lot. So let's talk about a couple of loans that we're looking at right now. So, well, before I talk about these two loans specifically, in general, a common loan for us is someone calls us up and says, I was referred to you for a loan to help me buy close escrow on this contract to purchase a property. I thought I can get a bank loan, but the bank said no. And they said no because the person calling is living in a home right now, and they have money in the bank, and they want to go buy their next home, and they want to buy it before they move out of the existing home. In other words, they're either moving up or they're moving down. And the reason they want to buy the next home now is because in this tight market with people, you never know if you're going to get the contract. Something all cash buyer may swoop in and ahead of you and get the deal.
Yeah, contingency sales are not working very
Right,
well.
exactly. So, so people are, and plus you don't want to move twice. If you sell your home now, then you got to move maybe to a furnished apartment. Those are expensive. You may not even find one. So, a lot of people who are moving up and down, they look to buy the house first. Well, you go to the bank, and unless you're making really good W-2 income, which if you're self-employed, you're not, or even if you are making what you think is good W-2 income, your bank, after deducting for all the things that they deduct for, might look at you and say, well, I'm sorry, Mr. Jones, but you don't qualify for having a second mortgage. You need to sell your house, or you need to, consider an alternative strategy. So people will call us up for a short-term bridge loan, and we'll help them acquire that property. So one of the examples I have about a loan we're working on right now is similar but different in a very important way. So normally, I said earlier that we generally don't make loans at more than 70% loan to value. More often than not, that also means we don't make loans on a purchase that's more than 70% of the purchase price, because more often than not, the purchase price, it's an arm's length market-based transaction. They've bought it, it's listed, it's through an agent, it's listed what we call listed on the MLS, the multiple listing service. So it's a market rate transaction. So they may think they're getting a good deal, but they're paying market value. So usually the purchase price is the market value. But many times the purchase price is not the market value. But the banks usually don't care. They'll base your loan that they'll agree to make you on the purchase price. So a situation where, actually this is a prior client of Pacific Private Money came to us and said, I have an option to purchase a home in Sonoma County for $700,000. I believe it's worth $1 million. Would you make me a loan of $700,000? So he was
like 100% financing.
Sounds like 100% financing. So we said, well, we will condition upon an appraisal. If in fact it comes in at $1 million, we will consider it, because that's 70% loan to value. So we wanted to see what the marketplace says the property is worth, what it should trade for at an arm's length listed transaction. Well, the appraisal comes in at $1.05 million.
Well, why is he getting it for 700?
He had an option to purchase that he entered into 4 years ago.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And we see this a lot. We've seen a lot of transactions come to us where it was an option to purchase that was entered into when the market was much lower.
Yeah.
And very few people 4 years ago believed, or even 3 years ago believed, that we'd have the kind of appreciation we've had. The market has gone up dramatically since the low of 2011, which is when what many experts consider to be the kind of the bottom of the market between 2011 and 2012. So, so this guy was getting a great deal, and so now it's technically not 100% financing, because he still has to come in with closing costs, taxes, and our fees. So we don't do loans like this cheaply. If this was a 3-point loan, so there's $21,000 in fees plus some additional underwriting and other fees. So he still has to come to the table with probably about $25,000 of his own money. But we're very, very satisfied based on the location and the condition of the property that if something went awry and we had to take the property back, that our loan would not be in jeopardy. So that's an example.
Tell you what, can we cut to a quick commercial break? We come back.
Absolutely.
I know you got some other examples.
I got another one we'll talk about.
All right.
Talk about our other deal of the week, and we come back.
Exactly. Okay, why don't we make another quick mention here for our friends at Pacific Trade Exchange, where you can do barter-to-barter exchange, all legal, all IRS filings and all that. A great way to do business without having to use cash out of your own pocket. Get a hold of Brian Capehart at Pacific Trade Exchange. All right, here's our second miscellaneous trivia question. What country saw a world record 315 million voters turn out for the elections on May 20th, 1991? All right, stay with us. You're listening to The Best of Investing. We'll be right back.
1991.
It's a long thing.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
25 years ago.
That does it. What do you want to cover in this segment? Oh, you have another example you wanted to do.
Yeah, and if anything you think of to ask me, just start
Okay.
lobbing me.
Okay.
Hard balls, soft balls, bocce balls.
What's your favorite color? Green. I mean red. Money, funny.
Oh, so funny. Oh, yeah, I love Monty Python jokes.
It's just a flesh wound.
It's merely a flesh wound.
Let's not go to Camelot. It's a silly place. Brian.
What is the airspeed of a fully laden swallow? What? I don't know.
Here we go. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. Again, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mark Klaus, president of Pacific Private Money. Trivia question for you, Mark. What country saw a world record 315 million voters turn out for the elections on May 20th, 1991?
Scratching my head on that. It was 25 years ago already. I'm just going to throw out a wild guess. Iran?
No. It does start with an I, though.
Italy?
No.
Iraq?
No, who else has a lot of people?
India?
India!
Okay.
There you go. Third time's a charm.
All right.
Okay, Mark, when we cut out you for the last break, you were talking about 100% financing and how still potentially, was a good deal. In that one example, you had a guy who had an option to purchase for $700. It was worth $1 million. It's 70% loan to value. You said you had another one.
Right. Well, I do have another deal I'm going to talk about, and it's different than the one I just described. But before I talk about that one, there are actually several examples of when 100% financing of the transaction makes a lot of sense. And again, a bank's not going to generally do that. They're not in the business of doing that type of financing. Another one is probate transactions. So parents die, or the remaining parent dies, and the siblings are trying to figure out how they want to dispose of the property. And it's not unusual where one or more wants to sell and maybe one wants to stay there. Maybe he's already living there, or she, and they want to buy out the rest. And so here's a transaction that normally can be accommodated where we can provide all of the capital that's needed to buy out the sibling or siblings so that the remainder sibling could own that house in full. So these are, for whatever reason, the banks just they don't like these deals. These are not ones that are in their wheelhouse. I guess maybe they can't sell them on the secondary market. Maybe there's problems with them. I'm guessing there's something like that. So we like those too. So probates, oftentimes divorces also create situations where one of the parties is moving out and they need a loan to help them buy a house. But guess what? Banks hate making loans to borrowers who are going through a divorce.
Or you have a situation where someone wants to buy another piece of property. They have a lot of equity in their first property, right?
Right. Well, that's another situation where we can cross-collateralize two or more properties to create the 70% loan to value or better oftentimes. So on a bridge loan, for example, there are many situations. We funded one recently where where someone was living in a home, they had lots of equity, they wanted to buy and move into their next home, but they didn't want to put any money down or didn't have the money. Maybe all their equity is trapped in their existing home. They have to sell it to get the down payment. So we can do 100% financing on the acquisition of that target property if we also take as collateral their existing home, and then we add up the values and do a little bit of quickie math, and we can determine whether or not that we're staying within our exposure of 70% loan to total value or less. So again, these are all creative financing, but I must say it's not risky financing, because again, we're looking at equity values. We're looking at solid valuations. We're basically here in Northern California. We understand the markets here. We understand the marketability, and even if the market turns, it's not going to turn tomorrow, next week, next month. I mean, we're looking well ahead into 2017 right now, and with each passing month, even the most bearish of prognosticators I don't hear anyone calling for a market transition before 2017 or even 2018 at this matter. So again, we're looking at operating within a relatively short window of time. So again, our exposure to risk, we think, is extremely low. And again, many of our investors agree, and many of them have been earning a great return on their funds as a result of investing in mortgage-backed notes.
So I actually had to borrow money, hard money one time, because I had the opportunity to invest in another building, and but I was getting a great deal on it, but the catch was I had to close the deal in less than 3 weeks. That's why I was getting such a good deal on the new purchase.
Right, quick, all cash, no
Yeah,
contingency
exactly.
transactions. Oftentimes, the seller's in distress.
That's
They'll drop
right.
their price if they know that they're going to get paid, especially if you say, here's a non-refundable deposit.
Exactly. So I looked and I thought, well, I'm not a hard money borrower. I'm a regular bank borrower. But when I talked to my banker, and they said, well, we're going to need at least 3 weeks just to do an appraisal. And I said, well, I don't have time for that. So I had to go to hard money. And it was a very good deal for the hard money lender. He charged me a fair high rate of interest. I think it was 10 or 11%, a couple of points. And it was a great deal for him, paid back in about a year.
Absolutely. So here's an example of another deal we're working on right now that I think is extremely secure and well collateralized. And again, it's the type of loan that most banks are just not making these days. And the borrower owns property in Tiburon. It's not his primary residence. His primary residence is elsewhere, although sometimes he stays at this home because, quite frankly, it's gorgeous. I went to visit it, walked through it, took pictures, and he was regaling me with stories of celebrities who had stayed and slept there because he knows people who work in the film industry, and he's made his home available for people who are filming in San Francisco, and they come stay in his Tiburon home. And he has it on the market, but he wants his price, and he is just not going to take less than what he thinks the property should trade for. And quite frankly, the market has been continuing at his at the marketplace that his particular home is in Tiburon. That market has been appreciating.
And he's not a distressed seller.
He's not a distressed seller. So he has a conventional first at just under 4% of $2 million.
Okay.
Now, he actually previously borrowed from us $600,000 in second position.
On that property?
On that property.
Okay.
So he actually came back to us for an extension of term, an additional advance of $200,000 on that loan.
So he needs $800,000.
So he needs $800,000. So even if he came to me today and said, here's the situation, I need an $800,000 loan, given that he has it on the market right now for $14 million, I'm looking at the property and going, well, I don't know if someone's going to pay $14 million. Maybe somebody will. But let's just say it sells for 10 or 9.
Yeah.
The loan to value, the equity cushion is ridiculous.
Because the first is $2 million,
Yes.
and you're going to be at let's say $800,000.
We're at 600 now. We had made him the loan a year ago. He had it on the market. He didn't get the offers that he wanted. He wants to put it through one more selling season through 2016, and so he's asked for an additional $200,000. Now the guy makes good money, but the cost and upkeep of a house like this is not inexpensive, nor are the property taxes. So he's looking for a little bit of a cushion, and
And you wouldn't mind owning that house for
No, I would not, and it will never happen because somebody else will come along and rescue him with a bailout loan. And should that ever happen, maybe at a little bit of a higher price. So, anyway, that's a loan we're working on right now. And again, those are deals that are just kind of out of the realm of the typical banking. Now, again, maybe 10 years ago he could have gotten $1 million home equity line of credit. But this particular guy's situation is such that even though he makes good money, he's got a couple of credit hiccups, and he's just not maybe a local bank. I mean, there's a lot of local banks that are kind of boutique banks for wealthier individuals.
Yeah.
Maybe some of those banks might make a loan like that to a client.
Well, some banks don't lend on residential at all. Some banks
Exactly.
don't give second mortgages at all. So the pool of money available is dwindling.
So, this is an industry that we serve at Pacific Private Money that used to be called it's the hard money lending industry, and I still sometimes refer to myself as a hard money lender. If I'm in conversation with somebody, if they're asking me what I do, and I say, well, I'm a private money mortgage banker. What does that mean? I'm a hard money lender. Okay, I know what that means. And but really, the term hard money lender, many of us in the industry don't like to use that term anymore because it does have many negative connotations. It was very predatory back in the day before Dodd-Frank. And again, we're not talking that long ago. I mean, 10 years ago, in the last run-up in the real estate bubble, there were hard money lenders out there that were making seconds to people with equity in their home who were in some form of personal financial distress, and really not there was no. Well, first of all, it wasn't regulated, so those people back then who made those loans didn't have to care whether the guy could make the payments on that loan or not. They were just making purely equity loans. Now, today, we're not allowed by law. There are now laws protecting the consumer so that we cannot make a loan on a primary residence where the owner is occupying it without doing a calculation of their ability to repay. So we actually do need to take into account people's ability to afford the monthly payments. And again, another thing to think about is, 10% sounds really high because for the last 10 years we've had low interest rates. In the last 5 years we've had rock bottom interest rates at below 4%, and even today still you can get 3.95 mortgage. But if you go back historically and look at the last 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, I mean, mortgages between 6 and 8% are not unusual. We're not unusual, and probably won't be that unusual in the years to come. So 10% is relative. It's how long do you need the money? Why do you need the money? It's a means to an end.
Very good. Tell you what, we're going to cut to our last commercial break. When we come back, we're going to have some good closing comments here. And a little bit more time. Okay.
Nice.
Here's our third trivia question. Again, miscellaneous trivia. What was the first planet to be discovered using the telescope in 1781? All right. And here's a hint. It wasn't Earth. Okay.
Thanks for that.
Thanks for that. The first caller with the correct answer wins a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Call 888-912-1190. That's 888-912-1190 to answer this question. What was the first planet to be discovered using the telescope in 1781? Stay with us. You're listening to The Best of Investing. We're going to be right back. Let's see how many minutes we have left.
Minutians.
What do you want to cover in this last one? I think we got probably about 8-9 minutes. Okay, we have to tell people who you are and how to get a hold of you.
Yes. Oh, what else? I can talk about how our loans essentially are identical to bank loans in terms of the legal structure and the protection. We go through escrows, we get title insurance.
Okay. I'll lead in with that. How's that?
Yeah, exactly. So how do your loans differ from the loans that banks make? Are they less secure? Are they less safe? Are they riskier? Yeah, that'd be a good
Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host. Last time for today, Mark Hunt, my co-host, is joining me. When we cut to the last commercial break, we asked this trivia question. What was the first planet to be discovered using the telescope in 1781?
What is it, Jupiter?
No, Uranus. Or Uranus, however you want.
You know, I didn't want to guess that
Just because the name.
Just because the name.
Oh,
Yeah.
come on, it's a family show. Okay, so Mark, you know, when you make a loan to a borrower, I'm sure you don't just do it on a handshake. You know, how do your loans compare either differently or the same as doing a regular bank loan?
Like a bank loan. So that's a great question, Edward. I'm glad you asked it because one of the great things about our business model is how similar it really is in many ways to bank lending. And what I'm about to tell you, really surprises a lot of people, but we use the exact same contracts that the banks do. We have the same type of protections, the same type of collateral and security agreements. For all intents and purposes, the loans we make are virtually identical in terms of legal protection that the banks make. So all of our loans have a detailed promissory note and deed of trust. 100% of our loans go through a title company, an escrow company here in California, whether it's Fidelity, National Title, or First American Title, or Old Republic Title. We oftentimes, when we get to choose, we have our own title company we like to use. It's a Fidelity National Title branch. But oftentimes we don't get to choose the title company because maybe the transaction already exists, maybe they're already in escrow. But every loan is funded through a title company. Every loan we make has a lender's policy of title insurance issued either to us if it's a fund loan or to our individual investor if it's an individually funded loan. All the documents are signed before a notary at the title company. The title company can choose to use a mobile notary if they choose to. We do work with DocuSign and other types of kind of cutting edge technology that the escrow companies are now using. But essentially, and hazard insurance, we don't fund a loan without getting the hazard insurance binder issued, naming us, the lender, as a mortgagee in case something happens to the property. So we go through the exact same checklist. Really the only difference between a loan funded by Pacific Private Money and a loan funded by any bank or conventional mortgage lender is that we don't run our borrowers through the ringer. We don't need 2 years of tax returns. We don't need 24 months of bank stubs. We don't force you to have your reserves seasoned for 6 months. I mean, there's a lot of things. We don't force you to have a FICO score of 680 or above. There's a number of things that the banks do because banks make millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of loans. There's hundreds of transactions. They have to reduce a borrower to a collection of numbers, to ones and zeros. You're a FICO score. You're a W-2 statement. At companies like Pacific Private Money, we're subjective lenders. We're like bankers used to be in the 1960s when my dad would walk into his bank, say, hey, I need a loan to build a house because he was a contractor, and he would literally fill out an application there and go pick up a check in a couple of days. I mean, it was just, it was all about the story. They knew him, they trusted him, they made a loan to him because they knew he was good for it.
So how do you figure out the ability to repay them?
So it depends on the type of loan. Now, if it's a business purpose or a fix and flip, we are not obligated by law to determine whether or not the applicant can afford the monthly loan payments. Even though we do anyway, we're not obligated when it's an investment purpose or business purpose loan. That's the current law. But Dodd-Frank now resulted in regulations where if it's a consumer purpose loan, it's a loan either on their primary residence, and the purpose of the loan is to either buy another primary residence or to maybe consolidate debt if it's a second. Those we are obligated to underwrite the loan to determine whether the borrower can afford to make those payments. And we have 8 steps that we go through, and can look at other types of income, and we can also look at future income, where banks always look behind. We can look at what's happening now and what's likely to happen in the future. So we have more flexibility. That's why I say we're a subjective lender, and yet when it comes to actually making the loan, the actual process of creating and originating and securing that loan is identical to the way the banks do it. All the same protections and securities.
How many losses have been experienced?
So 1,200 loans we've made at Pacific Private Money since 2008. We have foreclosed less than a dozen times on properties. There have been no losses. No losses of principal, no losses of interest. In fact,
It's a pretty good batting average.
yeah, I think actual properties that have actually ended up back in the hands of the lender, where the lender ended up owning the property, has been less than 5. And in every one of those situations, they made money on the deal. They were actually better off for foreclosing. But the reason why the number is so low is because we're really making loans to people who, even if they lose money on the deal, because maybe it's a fix and flip, we don't lose money because we're not exposed. We didn't make 100% financing to them.
Yeah, if they put 30% down, they might only get 20% of it back.
Right, exactly.
So, Mark, we only have about 45 seconds left. Give out your information. Any of the thing you want to tell
Yeah, I realize I haven't given out my how do you get a hold of me kind of information, but again, Google has worked wonders. If you type Pacific Private Money in there, boom, we pop right up. We actually have 2 websites. The fund, the Pacific Money Fund, has its own website at pacificmoneyfund.com, and our brokerage, if you're interested in alternative financing, is Pacific Private Money, and that's at pacificprivatemoney.com, and we're right here in the Bay Area at 415-883-2150. And again, go to our website because all of our information is on there. Our phone number, our address, our smiling pictures. We're very, very transparent, one of the most transparent private lending originators in the Northern California, in my opinion.
Yes,
So
that was what a lot of people said at the event, too.
yeah, absolutely. So for more information, give us a call for 8% or more on your savings, or for fast, no-nonsense, friendly financing that you can count on to close.
Very good. We're going to cut out of here now. Here's our thoughts for the day. It is illegal for alcohol commercials to use the description refreshing. I don't know why. I always thought beer was kind of refreshing. And the Speaker of the House in England is not allowed to speak. Too bad we don't have that in the United States. Tune in next week to The Best of Investing. We're going to be giving away more free vacations for answering trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm Edward Brown, wishing you the best of investing. So long.
So Hams used to have that commercial with the bear that was
that's right.
Hams the beer refreshing.
Oh, yeah.
I guess they outlawed that. They can't.
Yeah.
Can't